Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I want to talk about something that I've been struggling with and try and be as candid and open as possible about it. That's going to be my struggle with anxiety. It's something that I didn't even realize that I was dealing with when it was happening, and I hadn't had what I felt like was an actual issue with it up until about 4 or 5 years ago. So right before I turned 30 was the first time I felt like I ever even had to deal with anxiety. And even at that time, I didn't even realize what I was going through when it was happening. If anything, it's going to be about, how I feel like it started for me, what I kind of used to deal with it, and even what happens to me as it's happening. And then, hoping that it'll help somebody deal with it. And I mean, even if you have tips to deal with it, if it's something that you go through, because it's still something that I'm actively dealing with and trying to make it better so that it doesn't cause issues with other things that go on with me when this happens. So the first thing I want to do, obviously, look up the term anxiety. So we have the textbook definition of it, and it says, I'm just on dictionary.com. Anxiety is distress or uneasiness of the mind caused by fear of danger or misfortune. Obviously, most people know the definition and, hear people talk about it, especially right now, all the time. But for me, I really felt like even growing up, it wasn't something that we necessarily talked about in the household. Not that it was ever me feeling like I had those feelings and didn't have anybody to talk to. I genuinely felt like it was something that I didn't really know what it was and that I never dealt with it. So when it did happen to me and I was actually dealing with it, I had no clue what was actually going on. I didn't even know how to reason with what was happening to figure out that it was anxiety. So backstory, I was at work. I worked in a smaller retail store. At the time, I was the store manager and I had a real small team. So there wasn't many people that I had to be with there at a time. I think at this point in time, I was actually there by myself and my assistant manager was getting ready to come in. And all of a sudden, I started to have this overwhelming feeling of adrenaline rushing through my body, and then I got super tired and my heart started to race and race and race, and I'm like, what is going on? I didn't know what was happening or anything like that. So as soon as it happened, I got super tired. So I literally, when my assistant came in, I literally sat in the back room on the floor just trying to breathe and be like, okay, what did I just do? What happened? What made me feel like this? Couldn't put my finger on what it was at all, because I hadn't, like I said, I didn't technically know what dealing with anxiety felt like. I couldn't think of anything that I felt like I was overexerting myself to get to that point. I literally was just standing there working on the computer, doing whatever I needed to do, and it just happened. So I'm like, okay, what is going on? And I think I even went home that day. I called my DM and she was like, yeah, that's fine. Go home, deal with it or whatever. And I think my assistant manager, she was the one that told me that. She was like, I think you're having an anxiety attack. And I'm like, what? What? She told me that obviously she was dealing with anxiety and had dealt with it. So the signs the symptoms that I was having was something that fell in line with an anxiety attack. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess. So I went home, tried to describe it to James what I was feeling, and we both were sitting there like, really? Because at the time, like I said, I was a store manager at a small retail store. There wasn't anything that I felt like would have caused something like that, because my association with anxiety was always stress. I'm like, well, I'm not in a stressful situation. If anything, this job is really easy. It was probably one of the easiest jobs I had ever had. And it was fun, super simple, lighthearted. So why would I be stressed about work? What would cause me to feel stressed about work? It was the strangest thing. So I kind of brushed it off, didn't really think about it. And like I said, that was, I want to say, probably about 4 or 5 years ago. A year after that, I was at my last job before I started working at Ulta. I was a store manager at Sally's. I can't remember what exactly happened that day, but something happened where it was really, really stressful. I felt like the stress overcome my body, because every now and then I felt like after that first, I guess, anxiety attack that I had, there were instances where I felt like, okay, I feel like real, I guess I would say anxious, but I was still trying to understand what I was actually going through. So I would have those feelings and then just kind of brush it off. Like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's what it is. But this time at Sally's, it was real hard. Like it was to the point where there was a guest in the store with me, and she wouldn't leave the store until somebody else came in, because at Sally's, again, another small retail store, I didn't have a huge staff. So, you know, I was there by myself until my employee came in, and literally the customer would not leave until somebody came in. I remember very faintly losing the ability to speak in a cohesive sentence. I couldn't get my thoughts together, couldn't get my words together for like a split second. It probably wasn't more than like 30 seconds, honestly. I felt real dizzy, stuff like that. And I guess at some point she said it looked like I was getting ready to pass out, and that's what worried her. And that's why she decided that she wasn't going to leave. Then my employee came in. Once she came in, then I ended up calling my DM when I worked there, kind of explained to her what was going on, stuff like that. So I ended up going home early that day. I think I had like an hour left though. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll leave, because Lord knows I just worked. I was just trying to make it as long as I could, and they were like, no, Courtney, go home. I went home, still felt that overwhelming anxiousness, and I couldn't figure out, like I said, because I didn't know everything that falls in line with anxiety at the time. And like I said, every time I felt like I had a little episode, I just kept brushing it off. So it got to the point where I was at home and I couldn't get over the feeling, And I remember specifically posting on my Snapchat, asking anybody, did they have any remedies to help with coping, like dealing with anxiety, as far as like something real quick to just kind of calm you down. And I opened a snap from my sister, and I remember her specifically saying that maybe if you have essential lavender oil, you know, typically lavender, obviously lavender is used for everything as far as like calming is concerned. So I was like, oh, I actually do have some. So here I go, literally inhaling lavender oil just to calm myself down. And it was like, it wasn't working. And so I kept smelling it. Like I could feel that I was still anxious, and I literally wake up, I guess, trying to crawl into my bed. I see EMT, my husband, like looking shocked as all hell, like surprised and scared. And they're trying to pull me out of the bed and put me on a stretcher. I'm like, okay, what is going on? What just happened? I had a seizure. I'm like, a seizure? If anybody knows anything, as I'll get into it, if anybody knows anything about epilepsy or having seizures, obviously it makes you super tired like anxiety does. And so, and it's not, the instance isn't funny, but here I am just trying to get back into bed because I'm super tired. Like I'm literally crawling in the bed. The EMT's like, ma'am, no, we need you to come with us. James is like, Courtney, stop trying to get in the bed. I'm literally just trying to crawl into the bed because I have no idea what's going on. I still didn't even remember when the seizure happened or how it happened or anything. I remember waking up feeling like somebody beat me up and I was trying to crawl into bed. Whole time I had a whole seizure. And the only reason we know that that's what it was is because I was in the room smelling the lavender oil, trying to calm myself down. My husband had went in the other room because we were getting ready to leave. And then he came back in and he found me on the floor seizing. When we got in the ambulance and stuff like that, got into the hospital, and he's trying to explain to me everything that happened, I'm sitting there so confused, like, a seizure? Like, so of course, and anybody who knows my husband knows, he's super concerned, worried. Like he takes care of everybody all the time. He's always like concerned. So he's calling my mom, my dad, like all of my family, my friends, like letting them know what had just happened to me. And the whole time I'm just like, again, who just had a seizure? Like, what? I'm like dead confused. Another part of having a seizure is the confusion that you feel afterwards, because you literally don't know what just happened, what went on, how it happened, anything like that. To this day, I do not know what happened before, like right before, if what happens to my body right before I have a seizure, I just know I get up and be tired and want to go to sleep. That's it. So my bout with anxiety was getting so bad to the point that it caused me to have a seizure. And so now I am a person that deals with anxiety and epilepsy. I'm still trying to navigate that space because I've had now 3 seizures since the first one. And I had the first one when I was 30. I think that was October of 2018. My next one was May of 2019, and then January of 2020. So at some point I was having them every 6 months. I haven't had one since January of 2020. We trying to ride that wave. But in this time, I've had to figure out how to deal with the anxiety that I understand that I've been having and dealing with, because it's something that I've created, I guess, a seizure, or I have now a lower seizure threshold than a normal person, I guess, that doesn't deal with epilepsy at all. Like I said, I'm still trying to navigate the space myself. So in dealing with anxiety, I have to tread very lightly because it can cause me to have a seizure. And my poor neurologist, that's just one of the triggers that we're just figuring out, literally just figuring out that that's one of my triggers is anxiety, because I know that there are others, but we still have yet to figure it out. So in dealing with, my anxiety building up so bad that it caused me to have seizures, I've had to really take a step back and figure out, okay, what in the hell is anxiety and what does it mean for me? What is this doing to me? What is causing it? And then how am I going to deal with this so that, it doesn't get me to the point where I have another seizure? The first thing I had to identify, and with the help of, honestly, James, probably the most part, because when I say he pays attention to everything, like the man pays attention to everything. He literally had everything I ate. He told the doctor everything I ate when I had my first seizure, everything I was doing. He had a list of everything that was going on. And every appointment I have, he is there with the list, everything that's happening, all that stuff. Like, when I say I am not, he is the organized one. It is not me. It got to the point where I'm like, okay, first I need to identify what's happening. What I've realized when I deal with anxiety, or when I start to experience anxiety, I feel like overwhelming adrenaline rush. Like literally adrenaline is just like shooting through my body. And I feel like that's the only way I really can explain it, because it's like I've tried to put it into other terms or find other words to describe it. And I feel like that's the only way that I can truly describe it, is that it's like adrenaline just like shoots through my body, and then right after I feel like an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. Like I'm super tired, which obviously would make sense if adrenaline is pumping through my body, like shooting through, and then all of a sudden I'm like super tired from that instance, obviously. And then I start to feel super faint and dizzy. My heart is racing the entire time, like literally heart palpitations. And that's why every time it happens, I'm just like, okay, what is happening? And then if it gets to the point where it gets bad enough, I will have a seizure. Because of it, I have been diagnosed with epilepsy. And for the last, it'll be 3 years in October that I've been diagnosed with epilepsy. This is why I've had to take a step back and really figure out what anxiety is. Because I'm like, yo, I can't just be freaking out and having a seizure and I'm not even knowing what's causing it. Because I guess I haven't even looked at it on a national level, because like I said, I'm still trying to dig into all of this myself. In the state of Wisconsin, I guess they had it mixed up when we went to the ER for the first time. We were told that because I had a seizure, I couldn't drive for 6 months. I'm like, 6 months? What? 6 months? Again, anybody who knows me knows, like, what am I going to do for 6 months? Like, what? I'm such a workaholic. I always feel the need to move, do something. I'm always doing this, doing that. I'm always doing more work than I need to. At one point, I had 3 jobs, or I'm always doing something on the side. I'm always like moving, going, hustling, stuff like that. So when they were like, oh yeah, you can't drive for 6 months, I'm like, who drove? Mind you, my husband sitting there the whole time like, well, duh, Courtney, I'm gonna drive. But both of us, we were like, and I think that's when reality kind of set in for James, because as soon as we heard it, like, I was still in complete shock. James broke down because I think reality set in that this problem was bigger than either one of us had thought it was going to be. Because I can tell you now, nobody on either side of my family has dealt with epilepsy ever. So I'm the first person to bring this into my family tree. I'm sitting there still like, 6 months, and he's just feeling so bad. He always want to help. He wants to make sure that I'm good. I feel protected, stuff like that. And of course, in this situation, there's nothing literally that he can even do because we don't even know what's going on. So I'm like, so what the hell am I gonna do for 6 months? You mean to tell me we got to pay a car note on a car that I can't drive for 6 months? This is everything that's going through my head because something's wrong with me. That's what I'm thinking about the whole time. We get to talking about it and stuff like that. And honestly, my family really rallied behind me and stuff like that. Even with my parents, like my mom and stepdad being, as far away as they are, everybody rallied around me. My sisters and stuff, she was my one sister, especially like in between her and James, giving me rides where I needed to go, stuff like that, taking me to work, picking me up, like really helping out because again, this was something that everybody was just like, okay, what happened? Like, what? And so the second one I had, I apologize to my coworkers again. The second seizure I had, I was at work. And again, and honestly, I'm glad it happened the way it did because I was getting ready to leave. Literally, I was getting checked out, ready to leave and drive home. And I had a seizure right as I was talking to the other manager, getting ready to leave. Again, I come to, and I'm in the ambulance. I literally see James standing outside of the ambulance as they're getting ready to close the door. I see his car. I'm in the ambulance. I'm like, I'm still at work? Oh no, did I have another seizure? Oh, I done scared the hell out of everybody at work. Oh no. I'm sorry, y'all. Haul me off to the ER. I'm like, dude, what happened? But at this time, I still hadn't really identified what was causing my seizures. And again, the only thing that made sense and fell in line with it would have been having anxiety. But at this time, I was still like, it was more active in my brain that anxiety had been a thing, but it was still me like, oh, well, I don't feel like I'm dealing with it all the time, or I have, that much that is stressing me out because I was still just associating it with stress. I kept just brushing it off. And even talking to my neurologist and stuff like that, like trying to dig deeper into why it's happening and stuff. And he's trying to figure out triggers and stuff. Because like I said, we're still trying to identify some of my other triggers for epilepsy between like just increasing my medication and stuff like that. But then I was still having these same feelings that I would have when I would have an anxiety attack. And at first they started to identify it as mini seizures because of how intense some of the feelings were. And some of them fell in line with what mini seizures are described as. But it seems like now, as they're starting to come into what it is specifically for me, it is just intense anxiety attacks. Then we learned I can't drive for 3 months, which I'm like, okay, 3 months ain't as bad as 6, but still 3 months? Like, really? Because then, January 2020, I had another one. Literally sitting at the table eating dinner with my husband. Another seizure. I'm like, that time I didn't go to the ER because if you know, you know. But at that time, they had told us too that going to the ER after a seizure really isn't beneficial because if you're not hooked up to machines and stuff while you have a seizure, there's nothing that they can really do for you. And the only medicine that they really have in the ER is to stop the seizure. So if I'm seizing for a really long time, obviously go to the ER, they can stop it. But my seizures last maybe 30 seconds to a minute, maybe 2. Like I said, I don't know. I don't see what's going on when it's happening. And it's not long enough where I could get in an ambulance, still be having a seizure, get to the ER, and then they have to stop it. So the third seizure I had, I didn't go to the ER. James still called the ambulance. They just made sure that my vitals were good and stuff like that. And I honestly stayed home and then just called my neurologist the next day because I was like, well, what the heck? What am I going to the ER for? it's a very expensive ride. That turned into me really starting to dig into, okay, what in the hell keeps causing me to have these seizures? So again, me identifying the feelings I had before, which took me a minute to really kind of put those pieces together, because trying to remember what was happening right before, or my thoughts right before any of my seizures happened, is probably the hardest thing that I've had to do. Even trying to put them together where it makes sense, I'm like, okay, like maybe, but not really. Because when I was getting ready to go home from work, go home from work when I had my seizure at work, I can't say that I necessarily felt stressed when I had my seizure. Or we were sitting at the table eating dinner. I'm like, I was just eating dinner. But I am learning that I am a person that tends to suppress a lot. And this is just something that I'm learning as I'm getting older. You know, you get older, you get wiser. It's something that I'm learning that I do as a person, and that's something that I have to deal with. So aside from what happens when I feel my anxiety, I had to dig into what is causing it, which now when I feel like I have anxiety attacks, I can identify the thoughts that I'm having before the attack actually happens, and then kind of get to the point where I can get away from the thought and kind of calm myself down. But some of my causes that I have identified aren't anything that I thought that would cause somebody to have an anxiety attack. Because I was, like I said, before any of this even happened to me, it was me, oh, it's a stressful situation. Let me not be stressed and then I won't have it. That is not the case for me. It's like suppressed stress or suppressed feelings that stresses me out internally. And I'm like, first of all, this is deep. I'm not that deep. What? So, like, trying to get into this, I'm just like, Lord, what? Okay. So I've developed a list of things that I feel like have caused my anxiety, and I can say that it's more definitive now that it is something that causes me anxiety, because there's been times even recently that I've had anxiety attacks. And when I start to really talk about what's happening in the moment, because that's something that James is really good about too, is helping me get through talking about it in the moment, is talking about what's actually causing it. And so the things that I've come to realize that causes it is my need to be perfect, like the need for perfection in what I'm doing and how I'm navigating things. And it's mostly like work related or performance related, because I equate that to success. This is something that is a revelation to me, because it's something that I've never really talked about or even given a second thought to, because I'm like, oh, everybody feels like this, right? So I've always put myself, on the back burner when it came to dealing with this, as far as like what's causing my anxiety, because I'm like, oh, well, everybody has those feelings. Everybody does that. And so I never thought about it. So one of them is like feeling like everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be accurate. Everything has to be correct. And I know I've been like that since I was a child. And even having these conversations now, my mom always blames herself, because I was a pretty good kid in school, had good grades, like high honors, I was on high honors, like even in high school, National Honor Society, student council, stuff like that. Like I was involved in everything. I knew not to bring bad grades home as a kid. And it just developed into me wanting to be successful as I got into high school and in college and stuff like that. It was something that I just strived for, but I knew not to bring no C's and D's home, and barely B's. Love you, Mom. And like I said, she jokingly blames herself, like, so it's my fault that you got anxiety because you want to be perfect? I'm like, I guess. I don't know. But I feel like in having these revelations, now that I've kind of identified some of them, the last couple of anxiety attacks I've had, as I've talked through it, it's stuff that literally my last couple of anxiety attacks, I'm like bawling, like tears, bawling, uncontrollable crying. And I'm like, where did these feelings come from? Like, what? Because then something that I verbally said to my husband's like, I feel like I'm not doing enough. Like I'm not doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. Like I'm not getting to the place that I want to be. I always feel like I need to be productive. Like I said before, like I'm always moving. I'm always going. I always feel like I need to be doing something. And if I'm not productive, apparently that gives me anxiety. Did not know that. It literally happened last week when I had a day off. When I have a day off, it's not a day off. I literally still fill my day with stuff to do. It just so happened that we both were off and had the opportunity to chill, and we both ended up just falling asleep. Slept like half the day away. Once I got up, I immediately got into, I would say, I guess, a panic mode and started to like clean the house, do dishes, all that stuff, just so I felt like I was productive. Then James woke up and was like, oh, okay, we're gonna go to the store or something like that, because we had plans, but obviously we fell asleep. In that time, I started to have another anxiety attack and realized that because I had slept half the day away, it gave me anxiety because I felt like I wasn't being productive. I'm like, dude, I can't take a break. Like I can't chill. It literally gives me anxiety to not be productive. Another one, which would kind of identify with the first two causes, is putting myself on this like timer that I feel like I have to achieve certain things by. I've always been like that too, where I gotta do this, I gotta have this, I gotta do this by this time. By the time I'm this age, this has to happen, this has to happen, this has to happen. And I'm like, I'm literally doing it to myself. Didn't even realize that I was giving myself anxiety doing this. The only other thing that I felt like was always something that literally starts the anxiety attack is when I have too many thoughts or ideas in my head, because naturally I am a creative person. And so my brain is always going. It's always moving, thinking. Ideas are always brewing in my head, because there's a couple times where I'm like literally getting ready for work. One time I had an anxiety attack and I was doing my hair and I'm like, my hair stresses me out. What? Like, okay, yes, my hair can be stressful. A part of why I'm doing this. But I'm like, bro, no, my hair is not stressing me out. That's ridiculous. But now that I've identified everything that's causing my anxiety attacks, it was the thoughts that I had in my head as I was doing my hair. And sometimes it can be as simple as running down the list of what I need to do for the day. I'm getting ready to go to work. Oh, when I get to work, I'm gonna do this, this, and this. I need to get this done, need to do this, have this meeting, whatever it is. Apparently, if I have too many thoughts in my head at the same time, it causes me to have anxiety, which makes a whole lot of sense when you explain it. But in that moment, I'm like, why am I having this feeling? This don't make sense. Like, and I be so frustrated with myself, feeling vulnerable and helpless and stuff like that. I'm just like, dude, what is wrong with me? Literally asking myself, what is wrong with me? Because I can't figure out what's happening. All those things are going on that's causing my anxiety, and I'm not even realizing that these are things that I've literally done to myself. Like I said, my mom jokingly says that, oh, I pushed you too hard and stuff like that. But, even with the idea of being a success and doing these things by this milestone in your life or this age and stuff like that, that just comes from society and what you see everybody else doing. Like, oh, well, they got this, I need this. They got this, I need to be doing this. Why am I not doing this? Why did that not fall in place for me? All that stuff happens and you're not even realizing that you're causing yourself stress that you're internalizing, or at least I'm causing myself stress that I'm internalizing and not realizing the effect that it has on me or what happens because I'm doing it, and essentially causing my seizures. So, or at least one, I'll say at least one cause. The last one that I really had, I had to take a couple days off of work because that was the closest I had gotten to having another seizure. And I'm like, okay, for real, I'm gonna need to take a step back and figure out what's going on, because Lord knows I don't need to have another seizure. Ain't nobody trying to not drive for an extended amount of time again. That is annoying. And I don't want to feel like I got beat up every time I start having a seizure. Like, it's horrible. Like a Mack truck hit you. That's how you feel. And it's because obviously you're seizing and your muscles tense up and stuff like that. And I'm just like, gee, I'm not trying to feel like that. So let me go ahead and dig into what's causing this so that I can try and get to, not even if it's like the end all be all solution, but just learning how to cope and deal so that I can live as normal as possible. Like, obviously, you can't navigate every situation smoothly, but getting to a point where I can identify the causes so that I can come up with solutions for it and get myself into a better mindset. But it all started with me having to even take into account that I was dealing with anxiety, and it wasn't the typical anxiety that you see everybody else deal with. Like, you'll see people talk about it on TV or even on social media and how other people deal with it. Like, sometimes you're going to deal with it differently than other people do. And that's something that I had to realize, because I'm like, anxiety? Who got anxiety? Like, what am I anxious about? Like, and because I'm so simple and stuff like that, I didn't even think deeper initially to get to that point where I'm like, okay, this is how it's affecting me. Because again, I'm realizing that I'm a person that internalizes everything because I'm getting better at it. But I'm a horrible communicator. I've always been that way. But obviously, I've learned to be better at that. And for the sake of my mental health, I have to be better at it. So some of the things that I have learned to help me deal with it, which after this last anxiety attack I've done recently, was first trying to just clear your head, clear your mind, clear everything, all your thoughts, try and get them out of your head so you can just take a step back and breathe, because that's something that you need to do. And James is really good at helping me get through that, you know, making me feel safe, trying to calm me down, stuff like that. One of the things that I've learned that, because obviously it's easier said than done, one of the things that I've learned that really helps to clear my head now is the idea of doing a brain dump. Which for me, it's literally every thought that's in my head at that moment, I'll try and hurry up and write it down, because if it's out on paper, then I don't have to keep it in my head, which builds up into the anxiety that I have. So I'll take a step back, try to clear my head, do a brain dump if it's feasible in that moment. And then obviously trying to breathe and reassure myself, you know, okay, it's just a thought. You know, you're just having a thought. This is all it is. It's a thought. You're going to be okay. It's fine. And even me talking to myself, like, girl, what are you doing? Like, calm down. Like, literally, I'm telling, like, girl, calm down. It's not that bad. Like, trying to just get myself out of that space. And it's crazy because it's like, when I get to that point, it really starts to calm me down. And I'm like, why was I even dealing with it in the first place? And these are things that I'm slowly trying to get through. And I'm like, okay, it's not, whatever you think about, not that bad. Calm down. And like I said, if James sees it, because typically he'll see it in my face when I'm getting ready to deal with it, he'll hurry up and come, he'll like rub my back and everything, like, calm down, babe, you're okay, you're safe, you know, I'm here, whatever it is, we'll work it out, stuff like that. And typically it's not anything major, it's just that I've suppressed so much and kept so much in that I have to get it out in order to deal with it. Another one of the things is honestly just taking a break. That's probably the hardest one that I'm learning, is that I have to take a break. I have to take a moment and chill. Again, easier said than done, because I've picked up, you know, doing YouTube videos. It isn't easy, like, as far as like managing time when you have a full-time job. Like, you definitely have to make time out to do it. But even in that moment, because if you feel like you're overwhelmed, you have to take a break. So, you know, when I first came on to the idea of wanting to do YouTube videos, initially I was like super ambitious, like, oh, I'm gonna post every week, blah, 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 blah. Give everybody what they want, you know, make sure that I'm super active and stuff like that. And I realized that it's not that easy, especially because it isn't something that I can do full time right now, because I have a whole nother full-time job. I have to respectively do it when I have time, because I can't fill my whole day with this activity, this, and then I go to work and do this and be up all night and then do it all over again the next day. I know my body doesn't function like that. I'm not 100% when I function like that. So the hardest thing that I've learned in this process is, girl, you need to take a break. Even saying that, I'm just like, am I really gonna take a break? Like, and again, we have a great support system. Like, my husband and my family, like, no, Courtney, you're about to take a break. Like, okay, fine. And that's me. trying to deal with it. I think the last thing is probably just talking to somebody about it. And that's something, like I said, that has helped me dealing with this in general and getting better with it, because communication has always been my biggest opportunity. Getting to the point now where I've been able to talk about it has helped me even to identify with what's truly causing my anxiety, because even before, up until I would say probably the last 3 or 4 months, I was still trying to figure out, what am I so anxious about? What is causing this? And literally the last couple anxiety attacks, all of this has come out where it's not necessarily stress, like stress at work, stress at home, stuff like that. Cause I was like, everything around me is good. Like, I don't feel like I'm dealing with anything that would cause me stress. It's everything that I've internalized about what I feel like I'm not doing as a person, because I'm always striving to be perfect, or I feel like I need this success and this success, or I need to be helping this person do this or do that, and like giving myself all these milestones and stuff that I need to achieve and hit. And I'm like, but bro, nobody's put this on your back. I've literally put this stuff on myself. And when I'm not doing what I need to do, especially feeling like I need to be productive every minute of my life, I'm like, why are you doing this to yourself? This is something, like I said, I'm just now like, wow, I really did this to myself. Okay, I really wanted to do this video because, like I said, I'm just now coming to terms with what my anxiety is and how I need to deal with it, or what is working for me at the moment. And even going through and doctor's appointments and stuff like that, it's still very, very new for me. If you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments below. I also want to have an open discussion about anything that you would want to share that you've had to deal with and how you've coped with that. Leave that in the comments as well if you're comfortable with it, because I definitely want to have an open discussion about it, because I know it's not something that is discussed a lot. A lot of people deal with it on their own. They don't know how to necessarily, talk to somebody about it, or even come to the point where they realize what it's even being caused by, which, like I said, I mean, from the point that I had my first anxiety attack 4 or 5 years ago up until now, I would say like maybe 2-3 weeks ago is when I really broke down what's causing my anxiety. It's definitely something that I want to have an open discussion about, because I'm like, I don't want anybody to have to deal with this as long as I have before they're like, oh my God, light bulb goes off and here I am. I think I can deal with this now. Like, the amount of stress that my body has been under because I couldn't figure out exactly what's causing it is crazy to me. So, like I said, I need all the comments down below, because I am open to everybody's suggestions. I want to hear other stories, anything like that, because it's something that it's really taken me through the ringer. And I really wanted to do this video because I'm like, I want to be able to help somebody else deal with this, if anything, quicker than I have, and really be able to work through and get through it. And even just to have somebody to talk to about it, because that was probably the other thing too, is just like, okay, are other people dealing with this? Like, is this what's happening? Because like I said, you hear people talk about it, but then I'm like, is this what this really feels like? Is this what everybody else is dealing with? And so I feel like having an open discussion definitely is going to open the door for more people to even be educated on what it is, because that was something that I had to start my journey with, is even knowing what it actually is before I could dig any deeper into what was causing it for me and how to deal with it. So if you haven't subscribed already to my channel, please do so, because I definitely want to dig deeper into this, get more into this, so that we can be a better version of ourselves, because that's exactly what I'm working for. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up so I know that we like content like this, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye guys.